Okay, hey City Transformers, it is Jamie Lindsay here, CEO of Moved by Compassion Academy. Moved by Compassion Academy is a faith-based organization that aims to equip church leaders and pastors with tools and resources to help them develop outreach programs. Sorry, having a hard time talking today. Outreach programs that aim to have a community impact. And so I just want to welcome you to my show where I talk about all kinds of things related to outreach and ministry and essentially just being moved by compassion in our communities. So today I want to talk about something called seeing the unseen. We're now in the holiday season, and so for most of us, it's full of gift giving and party planning and socializing and parties. But that time isn't as festive and as social and fun for many people who live in our communities. And so I want to continue our conversation from last week, which talks about being servants. And one of the characteristics that I mentioned about being a servant is that servants are always kind of looking, right? They're looking, they're anticipating, they're seeing things that maybe other people might not see, anticipating needs that maybe other people might not be looking for or aware of. And so all of you are called to be servants. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about what it means to look for those things, to see the unseen, to anticipate the needs of others. And so while the holidays can be a really wonderful time of the year, it might not feel like that for everyone. In fact, it can be a time where people feel quite lonely. And so I wanted to share some statistics related to loneliness during the holidays. So in 2020, 11% of Americans reported feeling extremely lonely during the holidays, and 70% reported loneliness on some level. 64% of those struggling with mental illness find that the holidays exacerbate their conditions, according to a survey conducted by the National Alliance on Mental Illness. And so also the holidays, I don't know about you, but I can attest to this, like or love if you've ever felt like this during the holidays. But it can increase your stress levels. And so in 44% of women and 31% of men, they said that holidays increase their stress levels, which, can be caused by a variety of different things. It could be because maybe they're feeling lonely, or maybe they struggle with social anxiety, and so they know they're going to have to be around a lot of people, or maybe it's just planning the party and cooking the food and getting everybody's Christmas presents and all of those things, all the events that you have to attend, all those things can cause stress for people. But what I want to talk about today is that there are a lot of people who might feel lonely or isolated during the holidays, and they're probably people that maybe we're not thinking of. And so I want to talk about what can prevent us from seeing the unseen. And the answer is that our brains actually function to keep us focused on certain things and not to see things that are kind of outside of our task at hand. Our brains are really just a magnificent work of art. As human beings, we're taking in so much information at any given time. I mean, we're watching videos, we're looking at our surroundings, we're maybe working, listening to the radio, our kids are talking in the background. So we're getting a lot of information all the time. And so our brain works really fast to judge what you need to be focusing on any given moment in time and to make sense of it through your previous experiences, memories, thought processes. So your brain is always working really hard to just interpret all of these things. In fact, it kind of has a mind of its own. It's filling in the gaps where maybe it doesn't have enough information. In fact, there's also there's a phenomena or a syndrome, which I call momnesia. I don't think that it's a phrase that I have coined. I know other people have talked about it, But I bring it up here because when a woman gives birth to a child, our hormones kind of just go all over the place. And one of the hormones that that gets elevated is progesterone. And progesterone actually tells the brain to stop focusing on other things so that you can be solely alert to what's happening with your child. I don't feel like I have fully recovered from amnesia because my brain has never worked quite as it did before I had children. But that's a real thing. And so I just wanted to use that as like an example of how your brain and your physically, your brain actually prevents you from being able to see things that you aren't intentionally focused on. And so all of us do this. In fact, there are researchers who are named Christopher Chabris and Daniel Simons who study this phenomenon. They have a video called The Monkey Illusion. You can Google that. It's a really cool little video. And what they do in that video is they ask the participants, and I've used this in classes that I've taught, where they'll say, count how many times the basketball is being passed from one player to the next. And so the participants in my classes, they're really intent on following that basketball and counting how many times that ball is being passed to another person. But what they don't notice is that there's a person wearing a gorilla suit that like walks through the crowd of people and kind of pounds on his chest and then walks through. And so about 98% of the time when I stop the video and I say, okay, how many passes did the basketball make? Everybody has a number, but then I say, did you see the gorilla? And most of them had not seen it. And so then I show the video again and I show them that, they are able to see the monkey or the gorilla because they're looking for it. But then I say to them, but did you notice that the curtains changed colors? And so that's just the way that our brain works. When we're focusing on something, it kind of tunes out the other information because it's noise, essentially. And so I just want to make sure I catch everything I wanted to say about that video. And so the researchers, they use this video to demonstrate, and I use this video to demonstrate how our brains actually make us think that we see more and that we know more than we actually do. And I know that there's a whole lot in that statement that we could unpack about maybe being a little more open to what we think we know might not be all to the story, but I want to focus on just how our brains are preventing us from seeing our surroundings. And so the researcher Daniel Simons, he says that although people do still try to rationalize why they missed the gorilla, it's hard to explain such a failure of awareness without confronting the possibility that we are aware of far less of our world than we think. So I wanted today to face the possibility that maybe there are things that we don't see and that we don't notice, especially during the holidays. That even though we're good people and we want to help others and we want to love people and do the right thing, we still aren't actually seeing the world as fully as we think that we are. And so my guess is that most of you probably feel that way. If you do, hit the like button just so that I know that I'm not the only one. But in thinking about the holidays, I wanted to specifically talk about maybe who we aren't seeing. And so I wanted to start with some easy ones. So I think most of us could probably say, yeah, I've thought about maybe senior citizens during the holidays. They don't maybe get people who visit them, or their family lives far away and they can't get to them, or the homeless, and certainly underprivileged families. We're always wanting to adopt families at Christmas and take care of the underprivileged kids, which is amazing and wonderful and awesome. Keep doing that. Keep visiting people and seeing them. And these are definitely people who need our support. And there are things in place to help get them support. And there's agencies and there's processes and there are people that we're all aware of. And so I think that that is wonderful that we want to help people who fall under those categories of people. But I wanted to look a little more deeply into some other groups that maybe we're not thinking about during the holidays, but probably should. So what about people who live in group homes? People who are mentally disabled or physically disabled live in group homes. Often they don't have a lot of family who come and see them. And so that could be a place where there are people who don't have a lot of support around the holidays. People who maybe are recently divorced. Life events like that are devastating, and there's a lot of dynamics and family things that change as a result of that. And so those might be people who are isolated and lonely, or just generally feeling a little more down during the holidays because they've experienced such a change. What about recent, or I wouldn't even say recent, but like widows and prisoners? Let's see, people who live in homes for the formerly incarcerated or recently completing addiction treatment. So transitional housing, people that live in those places. Many of those people either have lost track of their family because they've been incarcerated or in the thralls of their addiction. Maybe they've burnt some bridges along the way, but they still are in needing of love and hope. And so those might be some people that you reach out to. Single people who don't have a lot of family. People who have families, but maybe their families live far away and they can't get to them and visit them. But what about something a little more, for lack of a better word, provocative? Like, what about sex workers? They probably are not a group of people that are at the top of our list of people who may feel lonely during the holidays or who need a friend. Anyone who, with COVID, anyone who's lost somebody recently, they may feel a lot of grief during the holidays. And so those might be people that you can reach out to and love on them and have a conversation with them. Or maybe go and visit them, invite them to your family gatherings. I know that with my family, it's kind of insane if you came to one of our family gatherings, because there's usually, oh my goodness, I'm going to say like 40 people, but between probably like 25 to 40% of those people are not our blood relation. They're just people that we have invited into our family, and now they're just part of our family. And that's just how we are. But it's because my grandparents set the bar of being compassionate and opening our home and loving people. They were always really good at seeing people who needed a family, and they gave that to them. And I'm gonna get a little teary-eyed thinking about them, because they were amazing people, and they changed a lot of lives. They gave people hope because they invited them in to be a part of our lives, their lives, our lives, my life. And so that, as we think about city transformation, that's what we need to be working towards. I've said it over and over. City transformation happens through relationship. And in order to enter into a relationship with someone, you have to be willing to invite them in, to be vulnerable. It's always hard to be the first person to be vulnerable. It's hard to do that, but it's necessary, and it's necessary to open the door to starting a relationship, especially someone who maybe has been alone for a long time. And so I'm so thankful that my grandparents set that example for us. And I always think of them during the holidays and how, we just never really knew who all was going to show up. And it was wonderful. So back to my list. Other people who might be lonely during the holidays are people who have to work on the holidays. So they may have family to go home to, but we could find ways to bless our healthcare workers and our police officers, our law enforcement, our military, our physicians, anyone who has to work during the holidays who may be away from their family. You could call and order lunch for a unit in the hospital. There are lots of things that you could do. I don't think you can go visit people in the hospital, especially with COVID and with all the privacy laws, but you could certainly bless the workers by, sending them Christmas cards or whatever. I mean, you could find some creative ways to connect with people during the holidays. But what I want you to do, if you could just comment, like, who are some other people? This is not an exhaustive list, but who do you think are some people that maybe need extra support during the holidays that maybe people are overlooking, that don't kind of fit in that big bucket of, I don't know if that's the right word, but the people that we normally think of, the homeless and the underprivileged and, even our senior citizens. I feel like those are people that we're always thinking about, which is good, but there are lots of other people who need our support during the holidays. And actually, I want to preface this by saying, or add on to that by saying, we shouldn't just be thinking of these people at the holidays. We should be thinking about them all year long. We can be a blessing to people. And also comment if, you are one of those people. Maybe you're feeling extra lonely. What is something that someone has done for you that has blessed you or meant a lot to you, to encourage you during that time? So how can we get better at seeing the unseen? Well, the first is that we need to be intentional about shifting our focus, not just focusing on all the things that we have to get done in order to get through the holidays. Sometimes I feel like the holidays are more work than they are fun, at least for me, because I have a lot of things to do. But we have to train our brains to see multiple things. And one way that we do that is by allowing ourselves to be educated, to learn about our communities, to be aware of the people who live in them. Next, we can also get over our fear of people who aren't like us. We will avoid the things that we want to see, whether that is on purpose, consciously or subconsciously. We will avoid the things that we don't want anything to do with. And what is the phrase? Out of sight, out of mind, right? But we need to allow ourselves to see things that maybe we're uncomfortable seeing. We may shy away from people who need us because they're different than us. I'm sure that none of us would have a problem being nice to our police officers and our healthcare workers and our military personnel, but would we find it easy to go into a strip club or to talk to a sex worker on the street? Or how about going up to a homeless person on the street? I mean, we may feel comfortable going to a shelter and serving a meal, and there's a structure around it and a process. Somebody's kind of telling you what to do. But could you just go up to someone on the street and talk to them? 2 Timothy 1:7 says, "For God gave us a spirit not of fear, but of power and love and self-control." And so we all have the power that raised Jesus Christ from the dead living inside of us as believers. And so God will embolden you if you ask him to. And so we also need to get over our fear of not being able to help. I think that might be a barrier for why people don't, like, they may notice somebody that needs something, but then they're kind of like, ugh, I don't know that I can really do anything. I don't know how to help. I don't know how to talk to them or whatever it is. But honestly, I think that if somebody is struggling with loneliness or isolation during the holidays or any time of the year, just someone noticing them, seeing them as a human being. I mean, can you imagine what it must feel like I mean, I don't know why I keep focusing on sex workers, so I'm sorry, not sorry. But can you imagine the life of a sex worker where the only people that see them want something from them, want to abuse them in some way? They don't treat them as a person, they treat them as a commodity. Can you imagine what it must be like if somebody came up to them and just loved them for them without expecting anything in return, just wanting to know who they are, not the service that they can offer, but who they are as human beings? Can you imagine how powerful that might be for somebody? Yeah, I mean, I think that right there could have the power to change somebody's life. And so just having a conversation with people can be an enormous blessing. And I know my introverts might be starting to feel really sick inside, and their stomachs are knotting up at the thought of having to talk to someone that they don't know, yet alone have an entire conversation with them. But I would just want to encourage you that you can do it, and I believe in you. And guess what? You're not doing it alone. You're doing it with Jesus, and he will give you the strength that you need to get through that experience. And lastly, again, that just segues into the next point, which is that we need to allow God to lead us. I know I talk about this all the time, and I harp on it all the time, that we have to be Spirit-led, but we do. It sounds so simple, but we don't do it. I know I don't do it, even though I talk about doing it all the time. I have to build a habit constantly practicing to hear and to listen to what he is saying and who I should be seeing, and then, what I should say. And, every step of the way, I need to be focusing and being intentional about hearing from God. And every moment. And so we need to ask him to give us eyes to see. I have a friend who attends a church in my community, and she, especially after COVID, their church has experienced a lag in attendance, as I'm sure many churches have had. And she and I, and also her husband, we had all prayed about for God to send people to them, to send people to their church. And she was talking to me about this the other day, that, when she brought this up to their leadership team and they were praying, she admitted that maybe they were thinking of like the normal everyday family with, 2.25 kids or whatever that statistic is. But God sent them a homeless person, and God sent them a drug addict, and God sent them someone who was suicidal. In fact, they ended up stopping their service just so that they could minister to them, and which is so incredible. I just have to acknowledge how incredible that is, that the pastor and the leaders of that church were listening to God, and that they knew that that was the most important thing that they needed to do that day. Not putting on a service, not singing another worship song because you had to get their 3 in or whatever it was, but that person was the most important thing that they had to do that day, that they had to minister to. And so I thought that was really awesome. And they were able to minister to all the people. But the point is that, if you ask God to send people your way, if you ask him to help you see the unseen, be ready, because he will. He will. And he will guide you in what to do. And you're going to make mistakes. But you know what? That's okay. Because mistakes are a great way to learn. In fact, we learn more from our mistakes than the times that we actually get right. So I think failure is kind of a gift. So don't be afraid of it. But I also think that most of you probably know someone in your inner circle, or at least at your church, who is experiencing loneliness or isolation during the holidays. And so I want to encourage you to think about that, to reach out to that person, invite them to lunch, write them a note, call them on the phone, stop by their house, plan an activity with them, figure out what their hobby is, and then ask to be a part of it, playing cards, painting, doing a craft, watching a football game, whatever it is. Just try to connect with that person and let them know that you care. Okay, City Transformers, I don't know if that was how long that video was. Usually I try to do a half hour, and time always seems to fly by, but I really just want to encourage you to ask God to open your eyes so that you can see the people that He sees. And don't worry about having the answers. He will guide you every single step of the way. And like I said, city transformation is going to happen by being relational. Okay, well, I am going to end for today, but I want to encourage you to please let me know what you thought of this video by commenting below. I want to know, what is one thing that you're going to do this week to start seeing the unseen, to start ministering to them? And if you like this video, if you like my content, I just really ask you to please share, to comment, to like, because what that does is it allows other people to see this content. And really my heart behind that is that I just want people to know that we need to save our cities. And I want to give people the information and the knowledge so that they can feel empowered to do that in their own backyard. And so I just, please, from the bottom of my heart, share and like my videos so that we can get the word out to love our cities. So before I go, I just want to pray for you. I want to bless you. Thank you for being a part of my community. I know that, if you are following my page or you are part of my free Facebook community, you are people who already get it. You already know how important this is. And more importantly, you know that it's something that God calls us to do. God calls us to be compassionate, which again means that we are compelled to act, to move towards ending someone's suffering. And so I just thank you for being trailblazers in this movement, and being moved by compassion in your own communities. So, okay, Lord, thank you, God, so much for the people that are watching this video. And Father, I just ask that you would open our eyes to see the people that maybe we're not seeing, God, the people who are broken, the people who are lost, the people who are lonely, God, that need you, Lord, that they need to know that you stick closer than a brother, God. And so I just pray, Father, that not only would you open our eyes, Lord, but that you would embolden us to act, Father, that you would speak to us so clearly so that we knew what to do, what to say, and when to say it, God. And so I just thank you, Father, for how you are moving. I thank you that you are raising up an army of people who love people, God. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, well, I bless you, and I will look forward to seeing you again soon.